POV. It's 2005, you're watching MTV, and the Pussycat Dolls show up on your screen. The name in itself is a statement. The concept and brand originated as a burlesque dance troupe, dawning LA clubs in the mid-90s. But PCD was later manufactured into a pop group by Interscope, one of the first of its kind, and according to members, they had the first 360 deal in mainstream music. But despite their fairly small catalog and short-lived stint, they would become one of the best-selling girl groups of all time. From hits like Don't Ya, Buttons, and When I Grow Up, roughly 55 million records sold worldwide. They found their global reach early on. Was it doll domination? There were many flaws, however, within the group structure. Ones that fans noticed very early on. Was PCD just Nicole and her backup dancers? The other faces blurred in this painting that made up PCD. From tensions in the group, Nicole's positioning as the star, lawsuits, a greedy group manager that would do anything to keep the Pussycat Dolls alive. The girls dealt with control, shame, pay inequality, and allegations of abuse. 2000s tabloids weren't kind and heavily criticized their image and what they represented. But with an ever-changing lineup, PCD's DNA was impactful but never felt permanent. Each girl, besides Nicole, was made to feel interchangeable. Inside every woman is a pussycat doll, says the founder Robin Antin, but even its own members hardly felt like one. And after several proposed comebacks over the years, three girls recently announced their official reunion in March 2026. But even that was met with a bit of chaos and a whole lot of awkwardness. What happened to the Pussycat Dolls and how will they be remembered? What is their legacy? Hey guys, it's your girl Cameron and I'm back at it again with another video. We got to get to it. I've had a lot of requests for this one. We're going to be discussing what happened to the Pussycat Dolls. Now, I love a good group story, and I felt like it was extremely fitting to discuss them today because they have announced their comeback as of March 2026. I love a good group. I've been on my girl group kick lately, so I felt like it just flowed with the cycle of content right now. And I'm really excited to get into this because there was a lot about the PCD story that I never knew about. Today, we will be going through the group's unconventional formation, their global success, their quick rise, the group drama, scandal. But get you something to drink, a blanket, a snack, get comfy, because I know I'm going to be. So without further ado, let's get right into the video. So we're going to start with the group's formation. And it's interesting because with these videos, I usually start with a profile on each member, the beginning before they got into the group. But PCD deserves different treatment in its formatting. I'd argue that this story is far less about the individual members, rather the collective fit into this pre-made brand. Pussycat Dolls began as a dance troupe. Yes, you heard it right. They were a dance troupe, a burlesque troupe created by Robin Antin in 1995. The idea born in the LA garage of actress Christina Applegate. Robin Antin and Christina Applegate were rooming together at this time in LA, and they were both showbiz adjacent. Robin had some dancer friends who were actively working in the commercial world, touring with artists, and she'd invite some of them over to dance at their home studio, and she'd set some choreography and pieces on the girls. And this is where they began playing around with choreography, and she was heavily inspired by Bob Fosse with this cabaret spirit. And that's where this burlesque essence was born as the concept. Now, Robin Antin, to give you guys context, because she is very relevant to the story, as you guys will see, she was raised in an entertainment adjacent family. So her brother is a celebrity hairstylist, and her family has been very intertwined in that world, and she was born and raised in LA. She began as a dancer, choreographer in the 80s and 90s, and her career was budding at the time. Robin Antin began this dance troupe, and Christina Applegate helped secure a Thursday night spot at the Viper Room. Thursday night residency at the Viper Room in West Hollywood, which was then owned at the time by Johnny Depp. And Johnny Depp saw the girls rehearsing and said, "This is why I opened a club." And it became a rotating collective. As for the troupe, now Robin was positioned as the curator, the brand shaper, and creative director from day one. Now the brand is choreography. The brand is sensuality, draped in lingerie, performing steamy dance numbers. Throughout the late 90s and early 2000s, they gained popularity in Hollywood nightlife. For dancers, it was somewhat seen as this underground gig, a great opportunity if you are not on tour at the time or you're looking for something to do. So a lot of really talented working dancers were part of this rotating collective. And in June 1999, the dance troupe got further publicity when they were featured in Playboy magazine. But popularity boomed even more. Gwen Stefani came to one of their shows and said she'd love to do a guest spot. So she'd come sing some songs, the Pussycat dolls would dance with her, and not just to dance, but to sing. And Christina Aguilera followed suit. This led to them doing more guest spots with celebrities. So Brittany Murphy, Paris Hilton, and more. And no, these celebrities were not paid to do this. This was just out of pure interest and fun. Because they were such a hit in the LA nightclubs, they ended up moving to a bigger venue in West Hollywood called the Roxy. And night after night, the shows would sell out. So it was starting to scale. Now, public interest had increased, but by this point, they were not a recording group. So I just want to clarify. There is PCD, the dance troupe, and there is PCD, the recording act. We are right now in PCD, the dance troupe, and that was a rotating collective. A lot of members were not even in the equation by this point. But in 2002, 2003, that all shifted. It was time to turn the brand into a music venture. A music franchise. Let's put the word franchise because PCD was very much a brand. Chairman of Interscope Geffen A&M, Jimmy Iovine, and A&M president Ron Fair jumped on board. Now, Ron Fair would executive produce this project. Due to the label's interest in developing them as a pop act and Robin's Rolodex of Hollywood connections, they were off to the races. This project showed just how valuable performance had become in pop music. The fact that a label would look at, then at the time, dancers, a dance-centered troupe, and said, we can turn this into something front-facing, tells me everything I need to know. The fact that mainstream pop was allowing this at the time. Dance had become such a focus that vocals did take a backseat in the music. And that could have been to music's detriment. I love a good 1-2 step, but PCD was allowed to exist because of these standards beginning to shift. And the joint venture with Interscope in 2003 was already started, but they needed to solidify group members. Because it was a dance troupe, all of the dancers were not singers. So we got to figure out the perfect blend of the dance, the music, and the identity. So let's get into the next section. BP. Before Pussycat. Who were the dolls? Who were the girls who made the cut, and what were they doing up until this point for this opportunity to find them? Well, let's start with Nicole Scherzinger. She was born June 29th, 1978, born in Honolulu, Hawaii, and later was raised in Louisville, Kentucky. And she's of Hawaiian, Russian, and Filipino descent. Now, she grew up going to performing arts schools and was invested not only in singing, but acting and dancing at a very early age. I mean, she was gunning for that triple threat status from the very beginning. Now, her family did have some financial hardship and struggle, so she'd help support her family by waitressing, local modeling gigs, as well as joining a local entertainment troupe. And after graduating high school, she enrolled in college, she received a scholarship, and majored in theater, minored in dance. And she really thrived here. She was landing lead roles in university plays and regional productions. And in 1999, Nicole was hired as a female backing vocalist for a rock band to lay down vocals for their second studio album. And although on this album she's credited for backing vocals, she did sing directly alongside the lead vocalist. She would go on to embark on a tour with the group, and this is where she dropped out of university. Now, this relationship didn't pan out very well after that point. So in 2000, Nicole actually auditioned for a girl group called Eden's Crush, and she earned her spot in the group by way of a reality TV show called Pop Stars. Best believe Nicole was going to be famous in any way she saw fit. She was going to make it happen, and I gotta respect the hustle. Now, their debut single, Get Over Yourself, was a hit. It reached number 8 on the Billboard Hot 100, came out the gate swinging, and they actually released a debut album. They toured with NSYNC, Jessica Simpson, did the whole bit, but the label went bankrupt and the group had to disband. Okay, so Nicole's lore is kind of crazy when you put it all into perspective. Now, because of this group, she started to mix and mingle with Hollywood crowds, more musicians, and will.i.am actually asked her to join the Black Eyed Peas. This was pre-Fergie. They were looking for a permanent female vocalist, but unfortunately, Nicole's then boyfriend turned it down and said,
And her boyfriend said no.
Nick's like, nah, she's gonna be a solo artist. I don't think that's the right route for her.
But she had to pass on that opportunity. So what was next? What would the next step be? Well, will.i.am actually says he helped Nicole get the PCD gig. Nicole saw that they were auditioning, Interscope was holding auditions for a lead vocalist, and she said, hey, Will, like, I know you know somebody. Can you see if you can get me in? Again, everything is about who you know. And so he was able to make a call to Jimmy himself, and she got the audition. But it does appear Nicole had multiple connection points to this project. Former Eden's Crush bandmate Anna Maria allegedly was the one who told her about the closed call audition. So it was probably both that helped her get her foot in the door. Went in, sang for the executives, and wow, I mean, she's a gorgeous girl. She could sing. She was clearly passionate, dedicated, talented, and she got the job. She got the job to be one of the lead vocalists in the group. Next, we have Carmit Bashar, who was born September 4th, 1974. So she was the eldest member in the group. She was actually a part of PCD's dance troupe. So she was a part of the underground movement nearly from the very beginning, where she started dancing commercially. So she's had experience working with Aaliyah in her music video Rock the Boat, Beyonce, Baby Boy, Crazy in Love, Michael Jackson's Blood on the Dance Floor. So she was widely respected in the industry. She exuded a level of professionalism for her to continuously get these high profile jobs. But she was also working with PCD as a dance troupe on weekends. But quiet as kept, she may be the reason why PCD ever got the opportunity to truly turn into a pop act. Because at the time, she was dancing for and doing choreography for Gwen Stefani. Ding, ding, ding. We just talked about how Gwen Stefani did a guest spot. Well, according to Carmit and other members, she invited Gwen to a show to watch and to see the Pussycats. And Gwen loved it and said, hey, can I perform with you guys? And that's how the celebrity relationships really began. But Gwen Stefani also had connections at labels. And so there were buzzings in the music industry about PCD. And that's essentially how Interscope even got involved, right? So as much as like Robin Antin probably did facilitate a lot of this, I don't doubt it. Carmit, I don't think gets a lot of credit for really helping elevate the brand into possible new territory, which was becoming a pop act.
I was working with No Doubt, and I met Gwen on the Bathwater video, and we became like instant friends. I met Jimmy Iovine.
Oh, okay.
Went to his house, and Jimmy's like, what do you do? I'm like, I'm a Pussycat doll. And he's like, what the is that? I'm like, it's a burlesque group. And at the time we were on the cover of Maxim. She finally one night we were doing a show, and I was like, it's last minute. The show's tonight. Can you just come check it out? Just come check it out. See it. She's like, yeah, okay, I'll come. She watched the show, and she was like, oh my God, I'm so jealous. I want to do it. I was like, we would love to have you, you know? So that was sort of the turning point, I think, for the group, because when she did the show, we created new stuff for her specifically. And Jimmy Iovine came, Ron Fair. And I think that was when Jimmy saw the potential of like turning it into a recording group.
Next, you have Ashley Robert, who was born September 14th, 1981. She came from a musical family, so that was always kind of a part of her foundation, but singing and dancing was a part of her life from a very early age. Now, after graduating high school in 2000, she headed straight to Hollywood to try to make it, take the commercial world by storm. She learned about PCD's dance troupe through a friend. She auditioned for PCD and began the group, the dance troupe, which was then at the time transitioning to a pop recording group in 2002. She was then selected to be developed into the pop group. Next, we have Melody Thornton. She was born September 28th, 1984. A lot of September birthdays in this group. I noticed that. I was like, that's a lot. She's also from Phoenix, Arizona, and she had experience singing with local artists and performing at local talent shows. But as early as she could remember, music was always a part of her. Her grandmother sang in mariachi bands. Her Black American grandfather was a blues guitarist and would play music consistently all the time. So all of that really made up not only her love for music, but her identity. Her mom was also a Mexican folklore dancer. So Melody's Mexican and Black American heritage was something that she expressed boldly from PCD's inception. Now, Melody was chosen for the pop group from an open audition, all right? She had seen and heard about PCD's dance troupe on an MTV special featuring Christina Aguilera. And she was like, oh, this is really, really cool. Like, this is dope. Boom, boom, boom. So at 19 years old, she jumped at the opportunity when she heard audition info on an MTV commercial. They're looking for singers. They're doing an open audition to turn PCD into a singing group. And she successfully auditioned, and she was added to the group as a singer alongside Nicole Scherzinger. She was one of the only members without a background in dance. She was never professionally trained in dance. Then we have Jessica Sutta, who was born May 15th, 1982. Now, she's Miami born and originated as a dancer, going to art school in her teen years and studied dance intensively. She had initial dreams of becoming a prima ballerina, but tore her ACL in both knees, and so that dream wasn't quite feasible, and she switched to theater for the meantime. Now, Jessica would go on to be a Miami Heat dancer until 2001. She was even a captain for the team in 1999, and she also landed some acting credits, which, fun fact, she had a role in the film From Justin to Kelly. I feel like this is lost media at this point. Whoever remembers, if you were an American Idol fan, after Kelly Clarkson won, do y'all remember this movie? It kind of sucked. Jessica Sutta had a role in it, a speaking role. She landed a few small commercial gigs in LA, which is how she met Robin Antin and entered PCD. So she was kind of recruited to be in this experiment. Then you have Kimberly Wyatt, born February 4th, 1982. She was Missouri born, grew up in a small farm town. By 14 years old, she would earn scholarships to study at the Joffrey in NYC as well as Broadway Dance Center. And after her high school graduation, she would dance on Royal Caribbean cruise ships until she decided to settle in LA. Kimberly met Robin Antin in 2003 at an audition for Nick Lachey's music video because Robin Antin was the choreographer. She loved Kimberly's movement. She thought she was striking, and Robin directly asked her on the spot, would you like to join PCD? So that's how Kimberly joined the group. So I want to be very clear here. The PCD members chosen to be in the recording group were talented. All of these girls were talented and had extensive history training in the arts. A lot of them were looked at to be this pretty face who didn't get a lot of singing parts, and they presented like the backup. But I wanted to delve into some of their history as individuals first to put into perspective that there was absolutely talent in this group that was most likely underutilized. So let's talk about the pre-takeoff, because although they had started forming the recording group, there was what I would call a casting lab. There was this rotation of them still trying to really secure the lineup. So prior to 2005, there were a few other girls who were a part of this member lineup. So you had somebody like Kaya Jones. She auditioned for PCD and was recruited as a vocalist alongside Nicole Scherzinger and Melody Thornton. Now, she did do a couple performances with the group for the first time in February 2004, but she left just months after this performance in September 2004. And according to Kaya, she said she left because when everyone is not on the same page, it affects the group. So I think that was the worst part, and I decided to leave. So it does signal that there were already issues pre-official debut. There were also 2 other girls, Saia Batten, I might have said her name wrong, I will correct myself, and Casey Campbell. They were dance troupe members who didn't make the pop act, but they were a part of the transition period. So by this point, they were still in PCD's orbit. I believe they were going into the studio, starting to record demos, see how voices blended, what worked, what didn't. And these girls were somewhat a part of that mix. I think at one point, Robin Anton was trying to be in the final lineup, but they said, girl, you're going to be the manager. You're going to be the group manager, and you are going to remain in the creative space per the label's request. And the final recording lineup consisted of 6 girls: Nicole, Kimberly, Carmit, Jessica, Ashley, and Melody, making it 6, a 6-girl lineup. And the PCD brand was already very established, while its members were merely plugged into the equation. So the girls had no say in the image, the gigs they did, what they sang about. They were just there as castmates, cast members, which is why I think many of us as listeners, like casual listeners, had never became invested in the multiple members themselves. A lot of what girl groups and boy bands up until this point and forward were selling was not only the group as a collective, but the individuality of each member. In this group, PCD was the entity and Nicole was the face. Anything other than that, I really feel like marketing and branding was not really interested in developing a persona, any type of distinction for the other girls. Let's get into the debut. Their official debut single released in April 2005 called Don't Ya, which featured Busta Rhymes. Don't you wish your girlfriend was hot like me? And it reached number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100 and saw global success out the gate. Their first song became their signature, their identity. The lyrics, don't you wish your girlfriend was hot like me? It's giving fantasy girls, right? It's giving I'm hot and I know it. Confidence, borderline arrogance, but it was fun. It really fit that hot girl pompous attitude that like a lot of the 2000s it girls at the time held and harbored. It was like, you want to be me. A lot of people may or may not know this. This song was originally recorded by a Detroit artist by the name of Tori Alamaze. Now, Tori was a backup vocalist for prominent hip hop artists at the time, very specifically Outkast. And she recorded this song first, and it saw moderate, small success on the Hot R&B Hip Hop Songs chart in 2004. So this was initially marketed as a R&B hip hop record. So the song was gaining momentum, but Tori was unsatisfied in her deal with Universal Music. She wanted out of her deal, and one of the negotiations to get out of that contract was to give Universal back the rights to the song. And Universal decided to shop it around and gave it to the Pussycat Dolls. So even their signature song wasn't necessarily crafted for them, but nevertheless, history remembers this song as theirs, their signature. They actually had not started really crafting the debut album yet. They didn't expect this song to blow up like it did. So according to Ron Fair, they got in the studio and recorded their debut album in 30 days. PCD's self-titled album, debut album, released in September 2005, peaking at number 5 on the Billboard 200. The album sold over 3 million copies. Stick With You was positioned as their second single and made it to number 5 on the Billboard Hot 100, so yet again another hit. Now, it was very strategic for them to release this slow jam as their second record. They were going to go with Beep. We'll talk about Beep in a second. But they said, no. We need to show a different side because we come out the gate swinging. Some people were slightly put off very put off by their imagery, and they wanted to show some duality. It was valuable for PCD, for their brand. Their strategy with this one was to appeal to a wider demographic. This song was spun and played on stations like Radio Disney, and that accomplished their goal of making something more palatable for people of all ages to listen to and enjoy. PCD was always trying to find the balance between keeping their burlesque origins and roots, but also how do we appeal to the masses, the household? And that was going to prove to be an issue.
We sort of had to suppress our burlesque roots, if you will, for a little while, just to kind of come out young and fresh and palatable.
Now, Ron Fair's strategy was, quote, "When you're dealing with children, if you shoot for that mode in the music you create, it's very, very difficult for it to translate up," which is true. Once it's branded as a tween thing, it's very hard to flip up. But what the older sister and older brother like definitely trickles down to the kids. That's what's happening to PCD. That's been this explanation for duality of the group while still being rooted in a mature image. Now, I totally understand what he's saying for this strategy. I think there were just some parents that felt like the image was pushed too far. Again, we will get more into that whole philosophy and those arguments, but he has a point. Now, the song was nominated for a Grammy in the Best Pop Performance by a Duo or Group category. So that was a huge accomplishment in the right direction. Now, they kept and continued to buffer that transition between the sweet, soft, maybe more seductive side to the raunchy and racy aspect of what they could be with their third single, Beat, which featured will.i.am. It peaked at number 13 on the Billboard Hot 100, so yet again, another hit for PCD. I think the bleeping censors in place of words, dirty words. Off of this run alone, PCD became one of the best-selling artists. Not groups, artists of 2006. And I really feel like they didn't have an idea that they would be this successful out the gate. So the girls did embark on a tour for the Black Eyed Peas as openers. They did a lot of opening slots, and Buttons was the next single in the arsenal. This song will forever be etched in girl group history. I really feel like this is their signature, truly. While PCD never got that number one Billboard Hot 100 spot, they came close a couple times. This one climbed all the way to number 3 and spent 30 weeks on that chart. It was a bona fide hit. And Sean Garrett, who was a writer of this track, said explicitly that the song was made with Nicole in mind. She is very sexy, so the concept of loosening up her buttons, every guy would want that. And every woman wouldn't have a problem with guys loosening up their buttons. Now, there are some issues in this quote, some questionable language, but you can see early on that Nicole was really used and looked at as a source of inspiration for this group. She was the centerpiece. When they were writing songs, they had her in mind. Notably, really the only PCD member on songwriting credits. But this song was another smash for the group, basically batting 4 for 4 at this point. Let's get into PCD Dominance and debates. PCD was on fire. Their songs were consistently charting not only in the US, but Canada, Australia, Belgium, Russia, Romania, New Zealand, the UK, Ireland, and more, very consistently. Off the album, they embarked on their PCD World Tour with Rihanna opening on their UK leg. And not only was the music on the top of the charts, but they were expanding the brand very quickly. They recorded their hit Don'tcha in Simlish for The Sims 2 Pets, which was renamed as Doba. PCD also appeared in a racing game called Asphalt Urban GT2 that was met with some complaints. Players saying that it was just a marketing gimmick, like we don't need them here. They scored a makeup line, a PCD makeup line in collaboration with Stilla. Robin Anton at this time founded a PCD themed lounge at Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas. So it was a lifestyle and entertainment brand. They were branching out to some people's excitement or to some people's dismay. It depended on who you were asking. Now, let's briefly get into the debates on over-sexualization, objectification, right? Because I think the first knee-jerk reaction for people to see in Hollywood and media, they see women who are half-clothed and they're doing these dance moves and they think, objectification. Like, she's getting up here, she doesn't want to do this, she's being exploited, this is over-sexualization, this is inappropriate for my children, blah, blah, blah. This was the early 2000s as well, so tabloid culture was extremely harsh in their language, and PCD was absolutely a target of a lot of these debates and frustration. There were several instances up till this point where they caused a ruckus, whether it was the dance routines, the costumes, the song subjects, and people were uncomfortable with the origin story. I mean, no matter how much they wanted to branch into a children's market, the origin story in itself was considered taboo. On their debut tour, they broke Malaysian decency laws while performing in Kuala Lumpur. The brand's promoters were fined for allowing the band to perform sexually suggestive routines.
We have to tone down some of our sexy movements due to cultural standards for when I grow up and for buttons. We take out our hip rolls, our chest rolls, all of our sexy stuff.
That's because last time we were there,
Got fined.
we got
We got
fined.
fined.
But they invited us back, so we're going to be respectful and
For sure.
honorable.
And this was one of many complaints they would receive over the years. Globally, I guess, right? Like, you got to think about where you're going in the world. What are the laws? What's the culture? What's the religion? As Ron Fair said himself, he hoped that PCD's success with, older siblings, so the teens, the young adults, would trickle down to their younger siblings. But you also have parents who are put in that equation as well. Parents that were not happy. There was always going to be this barrier. This was not giving the Spice Girls. This was very much mature. And I think that's okay. Like, they're grown. But you do have debates on, okay, why do we need to market it though to kids? Like, maybe y'all just stay where you're at, and if it trickles down, it trickles down, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. A legit example of this happening, okay, in real time, was the group met with Hasbro to discuss a Barbie doll collaboration that could have generated millions and millions of dollars for the group. Two organizations, so Dads and Daughters, as well as Campaign for a Commercial-Free Childhood, lobbied at Hasbro, and Hasbro decided to scrap the idea. They said, we won't touch it, we'll leave it alone. Fine, you win. And so PCD lost out on that deal. And that would have been, again, another gap or bridge to connect to that really young demographic. And these organizations' arguments was that PCD's branding, dance music was far too sexual and suggestive for children to be associated with. I think Hasbro, when they were discussing this collaboration, because they did do an interview about it, they said, hey, Bratz came out, and Bratz, when that came out, it absolutely pushed boundaries. There were a lot of parents who weren't happy with it, but Bratz was kind of created and conceived from its own idea. It wasn't necessarily created and conceived from an existing pop brand. I guess they just realized, we don't want the bad press. Let's just let it go. Let's leave it. And so these are examples of brick walls that PCD would hit when trying to expand past an older demographic.
How do you know when you go too far, this is not right for me, this is not on brand? Give me an example of what you didn't do but was served up to you.
For me, it's, I speak to a very young demographic as much as I speak to an older demographic, because in the Pussycat Dolls Lounge in Vegas, it is about the women. I mean, you have to be 21 and over to get into the clubs and all of that. But, I take the music just in terms of the actual, recording groups and how to do it right and how not to do it right. I take that music and I play it for girls that are 12 years old, 13 years old.
How do you, now that you're selling a certain kind of sexuality, how do you know, okay, this is not, I can't do this for kids, and this is right, this is wrong? We do live in a kind of an over-sexed world, so how do you modulate that?
It's a fine line, because young girls want to, my whole thing with the Pussycat Dolls was about young girls wanting to dress up like dolls. Well, when you dress up like a doll, you want to put on makeup, you want to have fun hair, you want to have cute, kind of sexy clothing. So there is a fine line. So it's not about being all conservative with, buttoned up to here and not showing any skin. I mean, I might push it a little bit, but that's who I am. I come from the sexy world. You know what I mean? I'm known as like the choreographer who does sexy choreography. I've always had that behind me. So, but there's definitely, I'm not into. It's just, you kind of know when you're showing too much or you're not, But everyone has always said, maybe, Pussycat Dolls are too sexy. You know what? Let them say that. It's working. I'm doing something right.
On the flip, PCD have always preached that their anchor was rooted in empowerment and confidence. As someone who views dance as an art personally, just from my perspective, I do not automatically see burlesque or see sensual dancing and think, like, my mind doesn't automatically go there, because dance can be artistic and expressive and can emote in so many different ways. And so I think some people see that and automatically go, this is wildly inappropriate. This is disgusting. This is objectifying. But you also have to remember, most of the girls in this group were trained dancers who were executing moves that other people could just not do. So for me, I don't really look at it. I don't compartmentalize it in a way where it's just over sexual, right? I look at the bigger picture.
I think coming from a dance background, I just had a sense of myself and my body, and it wasn't just like overtly sexual. We were sensual.
Look at what they're wearing and the way that they're strippers, moving. What was that
all
like?
The buzzwords.
Yes.
It was so hard, especially coming from the dance background that I come from. You know, dance is a driver for me. The Pussycat Dolls was built on the dance community, and now I look back and it was like I get how misguided these headlines, how easy these headlines were.
But it's lazy.
It's lazy. Always trying to pick women against women and call us strippers and call us all of these things. None of where it comes from or what it meant ever mattered to anybody. But because they put that out there, then it just sways public opinion.
But I don't blame parents for also being protective in the same breath. PCD really pushed the buttons, no pun intended. What can we do that doesn't break FTC guidelines? You know, like I think they were always kind of teetering that line of like, how far can we actually push this? They released other singles like I Don't Need a Man and Wait a Minute featuring Timbaland, but they did continue to capitalize off of their fiery success. And although these singles performed moderately, they weren't showing direct signs of slowing down just yet. So I guess because of the success, they just needed to add a 7th member. They launched, or the Pussycat Doll brand launched, a CW TV series called Pussycat Dolls Presents The Search for the Next Doll. Produced by Ken Mock, yes, Mr. ANTM. So you already know some crazy shit was about to go down. But the objective of this show was to add a 7th member to the group for future PCD endeavors. I don't know why they felt like they needed to add another girl to the mix when nobody else was singing anyways, but again, it was all about the brand. Robin Anton would judge them on their dancing and singing skills, charisma, performance. In episode 2, why was the very first challenge exotic dancing in a glass cage in a restaurant? And see, it be stuff like this that Robin Anton be at the crime of the scene for that I'm like, what are you actually doing? Like, I can't even... That's where PCD starts to become a little sketch to me. Because why are you making these girls do that? Why? Why do they need to dance in a glass box in a restaurant? Now, Asia Nidolano won the spot and was announced as the winner in April 2007. But after doing like one performance with them, she was never seen again. She quit. She went to go do some solo stuff. So that's how you gotta know, y'all. Something about this dynamic was not right. To the point where this girl went through a whole show and said, you know what? I'm done. I'll just remove myself. So by 2007 to 2008, it was finally time to transition into their next era. But there were some hiccups. There was a mini hiatus that happened around that time. And this is when Nicole took the opportunity to take another stab at her solo career, one that she'd been trying to launch and lift up the ground for years, for about 10 years at this point. She had released 4 singles, but they didn't do that well. Very transparently, they didn't do that good. She decided to refocus on the group. Other members at this time did get their shake at doing some outside opportunities, whether it be acting or singing. So they were given a little bit of freedom. Now, PCD dominated during their debut, leading them to name their second album Doll Domination. Perhaps this was kind of the kiss of death because they started to slowly not to dominate anything after this point, but I don't blame them for claiming their popularity and wanting some stake in that. They were this phenomenon that just seemed to kind of hit everybody in the face. This album featured lead vocals from Nicole with some support from Melody. Other members were only credited for backing vocals. And that's what floors me. I'm like, y'all couldn't give the other girls a little line? Nothing? A word? Crazy work. The second album was released in September 2008 and was supported by its lead single, When I Grow Up. Okay, that's my song. This was another global success and it reached number 9 on the Billboard Hot 100. Now, fun fact, this song was actually written for and offered to Britney Spears for her 2007 Blackout album, but they decided to respectfully decline. So the song did go through several phases because it was actually intended for Nicole's solo project, Her name is Nicole, which would be scrapped, and decided it would be better suited for PCD. Several songs off of this album have the exact same story. Now, you may have noticed though, one girl's missing. Where did she go? There's somebody missing here. A shocking blow, as the longest standing member, Carmit, had announced her departure from PCD. She cited that she wanted to pursue more solo projects and endeavors. Initially, it was vague as to why she left. People suspected there was tension, obviously, because it wasn't that hard to believe, but people also noticed, okay, Carmit is out. Jessica dyed her hair red. And according to Jessica, she was forced to dye her hair red, with this implication that they were purposely trying to throw fans off, furthering this narrative that you girls are interchangeable and replaceable. So When I Grow Up was the first single as a quintet, and following songs they released as singles were What You Think About That featuring Missy Elliott and Out of This Club featuring R. Kelly. Those records were serviced to urban contemporary radio. It didn't really go anywhere. Specifically, the R. Kelly record couldn't escape the bubbling under. The song would, though, become lost media around 2019, coinciding with the surviving R. Kelly documentary. They removed the song off of all streaming platforms. So they were in a bit of a lull. This next track, I Hate This Part, was, again, another track that was meant for Nicole's scrapped album. But this record was actually made for Leona Lewis's album. She ended up passing on the song, and it ended up in Nicole's hands. And then it later ended up in PCD's hands. This record was, I think, what they needed at the time. Like, it gave them another global charter. But I will say something very disturbing to me was starting to come up from the surface. The song structure and the distribution of lines, or the lack thereof, floors me. This started to peel back at the layers that this group is not functionable. This is not a team. There's no reason for this to be a group. Why are we doing this? The other girls were near irrelevant. If you look at the music video, they're just glancing off into the distance. They look like me when I was a kid. You know, a song plays on a radio and you looking out the window all somber, pretending like you're in a music video. That's how the other members looked. Nicole was singing all the parts. She was harmonizing with herself. What are you in a group for? Why is this? What are we doing? I blame this largely on management. We will talk more about the Nicole controversy within the scandal, so sit tight. But like, what are we actually doing? I mean, it's actually just kind of disrespectful after a certain point. Why are we wasting these girls' times? And why are you playing in my face? These girls aren't singing on the record, and you're putting them in there like props at this point. Then they had their single, You Are My Destiny, a pop version. Now, Jimmy and Ron had just watched Slumdog Millionaire. Okay, that's how you know it was 2008. They had just watched Slumdog Millionaire. They loved the song. They loved the original composition. And they got the green light from the OG composer, A.R. Rahman.
But Jimmy's like, we got the song.
He called us up and said, I want to do a pop record of J-Ho.
It released as a single in February 2009. So this coincided very closely with PCD's EP, Domination. This was a reissue, an extended version of their second album. This song was really their last bang, but it was a bang all right. Already a global smash without an English rendition, but this version would go on to top the charts in multiple countries, jumping from number 100 to number 15 in the span of a week on the Billboard Hot 100s. So this was one of the biggest jumps in a single week in music history. This song, I think, was the straw that broke the camel's back in a lot of ways. It caused a lot of internal conflict because the song was often credited as the Pussycat Dolls featuring Nicole Scherzinger. This was the first and only single credited as such, and so it shook a lot of tables behind the scenes. I get that Nicole did help write this record, but it further shows the complexity that I don't think the other girls were even ever given the chance or approached for any opportunities. The song, I think, just intensified existing issues. Like, it reinforced what everybody knew.
That whole little featuring Nicole Scherzinger was not a good thing for the other dolls.
Yeah, it was a little bit like, well, why you gotta do the featuring? Like, why can't it be all of us together?
This is our second album, it's time to actually be credited for my work.
She was the only voice you could hear. The other girls couldn't give a little doo-wop. Like, that's my whole question this whole time. Y'all can have them in the back harmonizing a little bit. Like, it's just very, very weird. And what made it worse is it's like Nicole tried to do the solo thing. We'll delve into that more. It didn't work out. So you guys do understand that the PCD brand is clearly important. Like, the other girls contribute something to this, even though you treat them like they don't. But even when she goes solo, it doesn't work out. So now you want to come back to the group, be a part of the group entity, but also feature yourself, like still separate yourself. Like, I guess it was just a constant mind for everybody involved, even Nicole, because we will talk about it. I think there's a lot more nuance in this situation. And this actually turned into a mess. It spilled on stage during a 2009 concert, a show that Pussycat Dolls did opening for Britney Spears, where Melody lambasted on the microphone. This was not a good setup for anybody at this point, and it was cracking and fans could see it. Now, the second album did not do well commercially, like at all, compared to their debut. I believe it sold only about 400,000 in the US around that time, in comparison to the first album that sold around 3 million. A drastic drop. And again, all of the cracks were starting to reveal themselves. Many critics gave the album an average to poor rating. Steve Jones of USA Today said, quote, "They are more interested in pushing their brand than pushing their boundaries." Ouch. There's something about this that feels so cold, like the structuring of it. And these girls were just merely chess pieces in this game that was PCD. You wanted to turn them into a pop group. One of the best things about a musical group are the music possibilities, the ability to play with more vocal textures and stack them and layer them, opportunities for harmonies, ad-libs. None of that was utilized. What led to the end? So by this point, we know that we lost a member. We had a member casualty. Carmit had left, but the last hurrah of their group was their Doll Domination tour from January 2009 to July 2009, with opening acts from Ne-Yo and Lady Gaga. The global divas they traveled the world. It was 6 legs and 50 shows. And actually on this tour, Jessica suffered a back injury, so she did have to miss several shows, dwindling them down to a group of 4 now. And many reviews for this tour, all right, when you read reviews from journalists across the globe, a lot of people praise Gaga's showmanship as an opener and said, you know, Ne-Yo and Lady Gaga outshined the headlining act. I feel like in hindsight, this was symbolic that music was now heading in another direction, that new people were starting to be ushered onto the scene. And Gaga, while flashy, had this substance and grit. I mean, she was a showgirl. She's talented. She has this hunger. There's something very artistic about what she's doing. She's passionate. So to me, it almost showed, like, with so many critics pointing out that, like, as headliners, PCD just wasn't, they didn't feel like the stars of the show. The openers did. Was it this out with the old, in with the new energy? So there were tabloid buzzings in mid-2009 that Nicole's contract was up in December. So people were speculating, buzzing in the press, is Nicole gonna finally leave? Is she gonna leave? But they did go on to release singles Bottle Pop and Hush Hush as their last group singles for the time being. And the inevitable happened. A hiatus announcement that turned into permanence, at least for the original members. And by 2010, Jessica, Ashley, Kimberly, and Melody had all announced on their own time their departure from PCD for good. This was a disbandment, full stop. Kimberly saying, quote, "I love what we do on stage. I love being a doll, but as far as the variables of offstage are concerned, I just couldn't do it anymore."
You and the girls, there was some animosity there.
Sweetie, it's just inevitable. Things are gonna clash and things are gonna happen.
What was the biggest clashes over? Jealousy? That you were the singer?
I think it's just inevitable.
Now, Robin Anton said, "Stop the count." She ensured, she said, PCD's not going nowhere. It's not dead. We're just gonna bring in some new members to surround Nicole. PCD never dies, okay? Robin Antin will make sure PCD never dies. And by May 2010, 4 new girls were revealed as a part of the new PCD lineup. These girls included Carrington Payne, who was on So You Think You Can Dance, Vanessa Curry, who was a former Laker girl, Rhino Razalan, who was on America's Best Dance Crew, and Jamie Lee Ruiz, who was almost a Girlicious member. But we need to take a little detour because speaking of Girlicious, back in 2008, Robin Antin created another reality TV series spinoff, PCD Presents Girlicious, where Robin was looking to make a new girl group. But it was extremely messy. It didn't last long. Maybe I'll do a video on that later. Jamie Lee Ruiz was a contestant on that show, and she was plucked to be a part of this new PCD lineup. But as you guessed, the 4 new faces to surround Nicole didn't last long, because by the end of the year, Nicole had finally announced her departure from PCD for good. She was gone. She was out of there. Even after Nicole left, Robin Antin just would not quit, okay? She still attempted to revive PCD. You know, sometimes you gotta leave a good thing where it was at. For example, in 2011, Robin attempted to rebuild the lineup yet again, using girls from PCD adjacent experiences. So she pulled Christina Sayers, who was in Girlicious. They had disbanded. A girl named Lauren Bennett from the Paradiso Girls, which is another Robin Antin created girl group. She chose a girl named Paula Van Open, Vanessa Curry, who was a part of that last PCD lineup, and then Erica Bennett, who was a former Dallas Cowboys cheerleader. This clearly didn't last that long. They did like one thing together, never released any music, but this group, along with other members added and subtracted, would become what we know as GRL. They wanted to differentiate from PCD, and Robin signed on to that idea. Like, let's just make you guys a different concept, a different vibe. Now that story is quite tragic and will be told in another video just to give it its respects. When we speak of the brand that was PCD, it was milked for everything it was worth. Back in 2008, Robin Antin produced a lingerie line called Shh by Robin Antin, marketed as PCD styled, inspired intimate wear. She released a PCD workout tape. 2 reality shows were filmed using the PCD name. Shoot, a PCD lounge in Vegas, which we already talked about. The brand was the brand, and Robin Antin was going to peddle it in any which way she could. Now, many issues contributed to PCD's overall downfall. Pay inequality. Some members claimed that they were paid salaries or fixed payments. Revealed by Daryl Franklin, who was a lawyer with Interscope. He had tenure at Interscope, became very familiar with PCD's contract. And at a panel in 2006, he revealed that PCD members were, yes, merely salaried employees of the label. They had no stake. And that the structure of this contract made each member interchangeable by design. In an interview, Kimberly Wyatt, who was a member of the OG PCD lineup, revealed that they had the first 360 record deal in the music industry.
We were the first 360 deal ever done in the music business. Napster was coming out, streaming was coming out, so labels were looking for a way to sort of save their asses. And the Dolls was the first time that they became a partnership, so anything that we made was shared. Usually the label takes in just the album sales, whereas they're taking in touring and merchandise and branding deals and all of that. On top of that, it was also a joint venture between the Pussycat Dolls and the label, and then we were castmates in an agreement with the label.
They put you on a wage? Yes. Yeah, that's what I thought. So everybody would think that you would be getting a percentage of the record sales and everything.
For the work that we were doing, however, and for the money that was coming in, you started being like, uh-oh, this doesn't make any sense.
So here's the thing. We were employees.
Really?
We
Employees?
were cast members to the brand. We had a salary, monthly salary, and then we would, for private shows, we would get a certain percentage. For merch, we get a certain percentage.
How?
You guys better stay in line or you will be replaced.
Yikes.
They even did a show with the CW. Finding the next doll. I feel like it was to intimidate us.
Yeah.
So PCD was a brand, and they were just hired talent. They were cast members, and they were made to feel like it. Having no say in the gigs they would do. I know Melody had expressed feeling like a lot of things they did were cash grabby, but they just didn't have a say in what they did, what the brand was going to be. And I could imagine how frustrating that is because, you know, PCD was a little racy. There was a lot of debate on where they could have taken their career, but the girls just were along for the ride. They had no a valuable say in the business aspect of things. But the girls also went through their own personal struggles. Ashley Roberts came out and said at one point she was so sick while in the group. So while they were on tour in London overseas, she had to be checked into a hospital, and she was in such bad condition that doctors initially diagnosed her with a brain aneurysm. It was actually a result of stress and exhaustion.
Going to the hospital, and they're like, okay, we think that you're having a brain aneurysm, so we need you to chill. And I was like, well, I need to get on planes.
I don't think a lot of people knew this, but Jessica was battling alcoholism at the height of PCD's popularity. But she visibly said, I mean, drinking champagne on private jets starting at 8 in the morning, partying every night, we're in these this fast lifestyles. It was triggering, and it fostered this really terrible addiction. And so again, that disoriented her a lot in this group process. They were everywhere all at once. Nicole revealed later in 2019 that she was suffering from an eating disorder while in the group. This pressure of perfection, especially as the front woman. And she knew it was dire when she said she began blacking out backstage at concerts. She began losing her voice, and she knew, I need to do something about this.
Never did drugs, but hurting myself was my addiction. There was nothing left to do. Get help or die.
Nicole has even said that some of these private battles, she does believe, caused some of the tension in the group at the time because they just weren't sharing certain things with each other, and that might have translated to anger, miscommunication, barriers and boundaries that they just couldn't fully break down and understand one another. Melody said she suffered panic attacks and kept a lot to herself because she didn't want to be seen as lazy or making things up. And for her, being the only Black member of the group, which she's spoken about this openly, and Latina member of the group, there was this representation she felt she had to carry. She said she felt misunderstood by certain members, like they just didn't understand certain cultural things. And I also get the hint off of quotes and interviews that she did fight being stereotyped or fought being given the default urban aesthetic because of her ethnicity. We've talked about the Black girl and girl groups and the consistency for labels to want to capitalize off of that.
I was the Black one.
Oh, well, clearly.
So that's when I first got on Twitter, that was my thing, and I thought about being like the Black one from the Pussycat Dolls as my main name, but I was like, you know, I don't want to do all that.
She didn't want to be stereotyped. She didn't want them to control her image fully. They all felt crushed by the group's intense environment, and unfortunately, they just did not have a lot of say on what they would do, what they wouldn't do, what they wanted to decline, what they could do. Like, it was just a lot. We have finally made it to the scandals section. So if you see an outfit change, that's why. This is going to be a pretty long video, and I just needed a reset. There is so much to dig into, so make sure, if you have not, take a stretch break, use the bathroom, get a snack, okay? Get comfortable, get some water. We have to talk about Nicole's dominance. I want to break this down because we have already established that PCD has had an unconventional structure. As much as they're a girl group royalty, I do think there was something extremely flawed about the way that Nicole was propped on a pedestal and the other girls were never even given the chance.
Then we were a group.
Nick came at the end.
Yeah.
You wouldn't think it looking at you.
Why?
Because she was always put up the front.
Oh yeah, well she was last addition. Well, because
Okay.
we were doing it before it was a recording group, so
Okay.
yeah.
But did it kind of get on your nerves that
She was the lead singer, so she was kind of the head in the forefront of it all. But yeah, man. I mean, you know, it was what it was. We all got to sing a lot more, I think, before it was a recording group. But
now, yes, in a lot of girl groups and boy groups, there is a lead singer. That inherently is not the issue. However, the lead singer usually was the person who kind of stood out as this leader and kind of assumed the role, whether it was naturally or everybody in the group agreed upon that, or the other people at least got to sing backing vocals or got a verse. PCD members were interchangeable. They were cast members, and the only one who had a solidified spot up until a certain point was Nicole. When I think of PCD, I think of Abby Lee Miller.
Everyone's replaceable.
So getting into Nicole's dominance and why this is such a scandal in the way that the group was talked about at the time, why it was a scandal on the way that the group has been remembered, there was a hierarchy. in this group. The group hierarchy was obvious to outsiders and everybody had to fall in line. Fun fact, 95% of the lead vocals on the PCD album, their debut album, was Nicole. So it was extremely disproportionate in line distribution, with Melody and Carmit taking some of the backing vocals. But here's the catch. There were other PCD members who could sing. And we'll dive more into it, but yes, in PCD there were more dancer-singers and then there were more singer-dancers. But you also had somebody like Melody who was signed on to the project to be a singer. She had no dance experience. And very quickly, she was told to fall in line and figure it out.
I'm primarily a vocalist, and a lot of people don't know that. So I got into the group and they were like, so you're gonna be dancing. And I was like, I can't dance.
So it started to feel like PCD was a ploy for Nicole to be a star. And you wonder, why not make her a soloist? And this is something that Nicole struggled with. She wanted to go solo and everybody knew it. PCD was anchored in the soul superstar rather than pulling out the individual strengths of each member. Teamwork, which was once the heartbeat of groups, to a capacity. That teamwork at least was always a part of the facade, the sisterhood. But it felt very non-existent in this dynamic, no matter how much the girls tried to convince people that this was an equal project.
Interestingly enough, that the group was sold on the idea of female empowerment and sisterhood, and ironically, it wasn't with the girls that created that.
I don't think any of us really felt that love and want back quite often. You do feel somewhat discarded. Yeah, there was never an intention to create a relationship that felt like a proper, I don't know, girl band.
Now, as established in the beginning, Nicole's lore is very lengthy. We know she was in Eden's crush in the early 2000s, which then disbanded. She was opting for a solo career even back then in 2001. She's been doing music her entire life, and she always had the dream of being that solo star, but groups kept gravitating towards her. Actually, in 2003, she had a demo tape and she traveled to NYC to perform at Arista Records in an attempt to land a record deal, a solo recording contract. But not to her own luck, there was a citywide blackout, and that single-handedly interrupted the meeting, and that was it. She never got a call back, and her dreams felt like they dimmed in that moment, literally. Now, back in 2006, while Nicole was in PCD, she was signed to a publishing deal with Universal Music Publishing Group, who would represent her in her future songwriting endeavors. And Nicole's first solo record actually came out in July 2006, and that was called Lie About Us with Avant. She then collabed with Diddy on a record called Come To Me, and this would become her first solo top 10 hit on the US Hot 100. But this was technically still Diddy's song. This did give her hope that a successful career was on the horizon, but again, she was still performing with the Dolls, and they were on fire. So there is this level of, well, you can't just walk away. And in 2007, the group decided to go on this miniature hiatus between their first and their second album. So that's where Nicole's solo project had derived from. The album was slated to be named Her Name Is Nicole, and was intended for a summer release, so around July 2007, but it kept getting pushed back by the label. And this was because she had released 4 singles, but they all failed to make any significant impact on charts. And it's reported that the label invested around $1.5 million on her solo project. Ebro, who was the host of Hot 97 New York City, had actually revealed that a lot of the pop stations that were supporting PCD records and spinning them nonstop were not supporting Nicole's solo records in the same way, which is ironic because Nicole was propped up as the star. So you would think that the music industry and radio and labels would be pushing the Nicole agenda, but they just weren't. The industry was questioning her star potential as a soloist. Could she stand alone? And that idea was starting to falter. Now, the girls were supportive, at least in the press, of Nicole's solo opportunities. I think there was some perception that maybe the girls were very sour or salty towards this. Not necessarily. I mean, Carmit even said, the reason I left in 2008 was the business structure was just not right. But also, I mean, Nicole had gone off and did her solo thing the year prior, and we weren't really sure. Like, I'm not going to be a sitting duck. While she's allowed to explore these opportunities, I'm going to go explore my own. And I want people to understand the other PCD members coming from dance backgrounds, singing backgrounds, a lot of them working professionally, were hustlers. They were going to be booked, they were going to keep a job, and they were all hungry. Yeah, so all of them realized, like, I don't really care what she does, but I just don't want to be a sitting duck. I want to utilize my talent. So my point is, it's usually a huge scandal for a member to go solo in a girl group. It is usually very scandalous, secretive, calculated. In this case, it was pretty clear that this was Nicole's project, and if she went solo, nobody was surprised. There are questions and have been questions about why Nicole was propped up so heavily. The other girls weren't seemingly given a chance. I want to make this very clear. Nicole is extremely talented, wildly talented. And I think that her voice, her talent, her charisma has only developed throughout the years into adulthood, right? But there were rumors. Nicole was dating Jimmy Iovine. And if you know or remember, ring a bell, ding, 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 Jimmy Iovine was the chairman of Interscope Geffen A&M. People started to use this to attribute the Nicole push, the Nicole propaganda to the forefront. And the only reason why I mention this is because the Trail of Dead lead singer, Conrad Keeley, fueled these rumors directly in 2007, okay? He was signed to Interscope at the same time as PCD, and he was not particularly happy with how Interscope was promoting their album. He felt like they were neglecting the group. And so on one of their blog posts off of their website, Conrad Keeley decided to call out Jimmy Iovine very directly. And he said this: ever since label head Jimmy Iovine started dating the lead singer of the Pussycat Dolls, it became impossible to get him on the phone. So that was the first bad sign. These are rumors, and just because he said it, it cannot be substantiated. But there was somebody in the Interscope loop who was behind the scenes, who was a part of the industry, that had reason to believe, whether it was he saw it, he suspected it, he heard about it, that there might have been a potential relationship or situationship or affair going on. This was reported on the blogs around 2006, 2007, but it kind of got buried. It didn't really go anywhere after that point. I do think in some ways it is a cheap speculation, and I really had to do some digging to even see if there was validity to any of this at first, because I do think a lot of people are inclined when a woman is pretty and she's gorgeous, the first thing is she slept her way to get there. And I don't think that's necessarily fair to position that or put that on somebody, right? But Nicole is a gorgeous girl, and she's talented too. And I think people also need to recognize that as well. She had the look, she had the leadership quality. There was a spark about her, right? And she could sing. She could sing. I do want to put that out there because we are getting into the nitty gritty, and this is the scandal section. Like, we are going to take it there. Things further unraveled when Nicole sat down for a VH1 Behind the Music special. This was years after PCD had concluded. And she kind of sat down for a tell-all, an expose of the dynamic that actually existed behind the scenes in PCD. So Nicole spoke on her whole side of this debacle, this debate, because she did get a lot of shit for being that front woman. She was painted as the villain. She's too selfish to share the spotlight. Everything's about Nicole. She's not a team player, right? All of these things were swirling and speculating. And so in the special, she revealed that she was the only one who was singing.
Almost all of the tracks, including the background vocals, were all her own.
I love those girls. They're like my sisters, but people don't even know the story. They have no idea. I was in center because I was singing. I was the one singing. I'll never forget, I finished the album, PCD. And Ron and I brought the girls into the studio, and we played it for them. And it was the first time they'd ever heard the music. Do you understand what I'm saying? We played the album for the Pussycat Dolls. It's the first time they'd ever heard the songs.
Now, I do think this is very nuanced, right? Like, while I can understand her frustration, if you are the one doing what you would consider all of the work in the studio, the writing sessions, you're laying down the vocals, you're dancing, and the girls did sing live. I'm gonna give PCD that. They were singing live. It's very clear to me, anecdotally from what other girls have said, and the talent that they did possess, that they were not given a chance. And I think that's what irritates me the most about Nicole's fun fact expose, here's the scoop attitude when she reveals details like this, and the way she says it and the way she talks about it. Because it's like, girl, they were not given the opportunity to. They weren't. Like, they literally were not. Some of the other girls literally said we were not allowed in the studio. What leverage or control did they have in this group? None. So why are you acting clueless? That's where I get really confused. And granted, I get that she was there and we weren't. But if we want to be very honest, many of the other girls' stories align, that they were consistently put in their place if they wanted to even try to add more to this equation than a dance step. Whether all of this information was relayed to Nicole differently, I definitely think that the power players were the real instigators in this situation. So whether they were putting a bug in her ear like the other girls are lazy, they don't want to work, yada, 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 I don't know. But like, yes, it sucks to do all of the work, but Nicole, you also got all of the credit for it. So I'm like, it would be different if she was doing all the work and like being pushed to the back and they siloed her off to the side. But like, yes, you did a lot of work, but you also got all of the credit for it while the other girls faded into the background. And according to Melody, Nicole had her own management and representation that the girls by proxy had to end up using. So she always had somebody looking out for her interest solo.
You know, Nicole had her own management. Her management originally became the group's management. Yeah, so she had someone to look after her, and we all were kind of getting to know him and getting to know the team, and you know, it wasn't about us. It was our opportunity to learn.
Was Nicole getting a lion's share?
Oh yeah. Yeah, she was the artist. She was the artist, and we were the cast members, the interchangeable cast members.
That's your answer right there. She had an advocate. They didn't. And I'm not mad at Nicole for having her ducks in a row and having some protection. I'm not mad at her for that. But this structure was not fair to anybody, and I do not love the connotation and this consistent narrative that the other girls were just lazy. That like Nicole was the only one with drive, passion. She was the only one doing anything because she was the only one allowed to. And I feel like it's that simple. Ashley Roberts, she claimed in later interviews that the girls were always told it was Nicole's project.
But it was with the dolls, and it was,
That was a
years
group.
ago.
That was a group thing.
Yeah, it wasn't.
You
And
spread it
nobody's
out.
ever known me as just Ashley.
you.
And even in the group, I wasn't allowed to talk.
That's really? It's amazing.
Yeah, we were told to be quiet. Only Nicole can talk.
Only Nicole was allowed to talk.
She's supposed to. We would pitch in every now and then.
Why did they say that then? Did that not drive you nuts?
Are you serious? Why do you think the band broke up?
Fans have made edits and clips of what seems to be Nicole getting visibly irritated when the other girls would speak in interviews.
All from different parts of the United States, too.
So we do.
We're super excited because this is the biggest show that we've really been able to do so far. And it's our second world tour, Doll Domination, and we've just really put our heart and souls into everything. There's lots of production.
Melody and Carmit said that they contributed to the album, specifically the first album, 100%. And they contested Ron Fair's claims of Nicole sang every record.
Melody sang a bit here and there, but the records were Nicole. You know, with the exception of an occasional ad-lib. But they were Nicole. They were created with her.
And who set that system up?
Yeah. The girls should have been gracious all along because she was the lead singer.
And it's really crazy. Like, you treated these girls like disposable castmates, and they're not supposed to have any grievances on the way that they were treated. Crazy work. Crazy work.
So it was kind of insulting that we couldn't even do background vocals or leads or whatever, you know? It wasn't a real group.
And they were in a 360 deal. You know they weren't getting paid. Now, Nicole had some residual income. Melody and Carmit have said they have some residual income from some of the records because, ding, 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 they were singing on some of those tracks. And when we want to talk about it, Melody even admitted that Jimmy Iovine would sometimes turn to her very specifically for marketing and sound ideas because she was the baby of the group. And PCD always wanted to keep a pulse on the younger crowd, the younger gen, to really see what do people want to hear, what do people want to see. So to me, that is more proof that these girls didn't contribute nothing. Kimberly said in 2009, every video and stage performance that we've done, Nicole has been our leader. I wasn't in videos like I wanted, and I wasn't see the way I was hoping, which has been the same for all the other girls too. So there is a general consensus amongst the other members. And I think that is valid to look at that when evaluating the dynamic of Nicole's dominance. And I really want to iterate, I really don't think that Nicole is the villain in the story. I really don't. But it's rather the label. It's Robin and people at the top who control their every move. I don't think this really benefited any of the girls. It wasn't designed to. Look at the contract. All of this is very interesting because Nicole never quite found her footing as a solo artist even after the group disbanded. She had a couple moments, you know, she finally released her debut album Killer Love in the UK in March 2011. I know there were plans to release it or re-release it in the US, but that never came to fruition. There just wasn't enough buzz. I mean, a Nicole career synopsis is she charted really well or decently well in Europe, specifically in the UK, so she would focus a lot of her solo career energy to that market. Now her record right there featuring 50 Cent did reach number 30 on the Billboard Hot 100, so that was her highest charting solo song as the lead artist. That was a little something, but again, it kind of stalled out and she went on her side missions. In 2014, she did release her second album called Big Fat Lie through RCA Records, so she was no longer with Interscope. The album did appear on the Irish album chart and the UK albums chart, but was considered an underperformance. So my point is considering her dominance in PCD and how much Interscope used that project as this agenda to push Nicole as the star, it is very interesting to me that her solo career was not able to take off, at least in the US, like I think maybe some people would have predicted to, because you would have thought her presence in PCD, the way that the other girls completely faded into the background, you would think, okay, well, if Nicole can be the standout and the star and the other girls aren't a relevant part of the equation, quote unquote, and they're disposable, then why can't she do this by herself? Did Nicole need backup in the pop star, the mainstream pop star sense to really shine? And so there was always these very shady things that were happening and the erasure of other members. Carmit actually over the years has said she was photoshopped out of the second PCD, the Doll Domination tour book. Remember, she had left by that point, but they were actively photoshopping her out of the pictures. And granted, she had left, but she did say there was this constant feeling and it reaffirmed why she left. I feel like Robin and team were always trying to erase someone's presence, and this was a direct example of it. Just to kind of spiral this a little bit deeper, while all members clearly felt away or had their experience, I think the tension displayed between Melody and Nicole was hyper visible and was used kind of as this main example in later years to show maybe some of the tension and how it spilled on stage, quite literally. Melody has been very vocal, even while in the group, that she felt extremely underutilized because she wasn't able to sing. And that's why I think Melody has a very unique perspective and she feels particularly slighted. In 2023, Melody revealed flat out, I was just a backup dancer. It was very painful for me. It was a big opportunity to show what I could do. And I was never given that chance really, because keep in mind, she was brought onto this project to sing. If you roll the tapes back to their 2004 performance at the MTV Asia Awards, pre-official debut, Melody was presented in that lead singer spot. She was singing most of the main parts. So there was some world where at the very beginning, before they were fully introduced to the world, where Melody was considered for that role. But after that, slowly her singing relevance dwindled. And so you will see further clips, later memed clips, where Melody was clearly sick of it. And on stage, during an award show performance, during a concert, she doesn't care. She starts singing her part. She sings louder. She takes over. She does the run. She does the ad-libs. And you can see the uncomfortability in Nicole's face. You could very clearly tell that she was just over it and she couldn't contain it. And so it culminated into some of these moments that would later become viral and say, damn, like this was what PCD was. Melody maintains that there was no envy. There's this perception that Melody and Nicole were beefed out, and Melody just maintains that that was not the case. And even when I was doing research and looking at archived interviews and articles back from that time period of 2005, 2006, 2007. I do want to make it very clear. There are interviews where Melody gives Nicole her props. She's very supportive of Nicole. She's supportive of her leadership role in the group, and she vocalized that. She just wanted to sing. And she said, people would assume that I was so mad at Nicole because she sang and I didn't. Well, no, that was her dream and it was coming true for her. I just wanted that for myself too. I'm a phenomenal vocalist. You just never heard it, but it wasn't Nicole's fault. So she was frustrated at the circumstance and resented being pushed to the side. The power players first and foremost are at fault here.
Getting into that group, and Nicole had been signed. Yeah, she'd been signed twice. So it only made sense for her to sing the majority of the leads, but then I kept being asked to wait my turn, and then my turn just never came, and we only released 2 albums. So it's this mistaken identity that I've had to kind of unravel.
And they almost always are, especially in these girl group equations. So let's talk about the dark side. PCD secrets, alleged secrets, allegedly. All of this in this next section is alleged. So we got to run it back a little bit. Kaya Jones, whom we've talked about, was a former member of the Pussycat Dolls. She joined around 2002, 2003. She auditioned with Nicole and Melody and was supposed to be casted as a singer. However, she just did not make the official 2005 lineup. It was a crisp fall day in 2017, and Kaya hopped on Twitter, dropping bombs. My truth, I wasn't in a girl group. I was in a ring. Oh, and we happened to sing and be famous while everyone who owned us made the money. She followed that up with, how bad was it? People ask. Bad enough that I walked away from my dreams, bandmates, and a $13 million record deal. We knew we were going to go #1. When this came out, other members did not back these claims. She claims that this was the idea of, as young women, we were encouraged to sleep with people or do certain things or be in the faces of X, Y, and Z to get ahead. And these allegations started to grow legs, and Kaya let the chopper sing.
I mean, at first it was cool, but then it was like, oh, this is weird. Well, when you're getting flowers from different celebrities all the time to be like your boyfriend, and you, like all of us, like whether it's Leonardo DiCaprio or Nicolas Cage or whoever it is, I mean, you're getting flowers from different really high profile men. You're getting all of this excitement, but then it's like your car doesn't show up at the end of the night. Oh, so so-and-so is going to take you home. Okay. But then you've got to like feel this energy in a car with a person you don't know who's waiting for something or expecting something.
The former Pussycat doll also says she was assaulted in the back of a limo by a music executive.
I was stunned and didn't really know what to do because he immediately just jumped on top of me and started kissing me, and I said, stop.
Where she claimed a lot of downright hurtful things went down, with Robin Anton at its epicenter. So a couple things she claimed in the interview is that she felt pressured to sleep with people in order to be a part of the group. She claims that they were only all paid $500 a week.
Hired cast members, in fact, were paid $500 a week. I still have my paycheck stubs because I know people wouldn't believe me.
I thought I was ugly, but then again, I was told that daily. So you're weighed in, you're told what to eat.
Midnight phone calls about what I ate. Everything was just you're constantly just controlled.
Kaya also claims that her first vocals were on the album.
Nicole said she did a lot of the heavy lifting. She wasn't lying. But there was other girls who did, myself included. And when I left before the launch of that album. And so they don't want to admit there's another voice on those songs, but that's why the first album doesn't sound like the second album, because I was on that and I did my work.
And probably the most concerning part that rang a bell and really grew legs, especially in the conservative space, is she claimed that she was pressured to get an abortion while in PCD.
I will show that you not only slave labored us, okay, we were put through severe trauma that we will never recover from. Girls had to have forced abortions.
I was told to get rid of it. And there's these 2 little girls in the front row, and one was like 3 or 4, and the other one was like 7 or 8. And she just looked at the little one and said, oh, Mama, she's a Pussycat doll. And she doesn't see what I am going through. She doesn't know anything that, that one has bulimia, that one's doing cocaine. I'm aborting my children.
People are confused by it. You're clarifying that you weren't, put in situations where you were being paid to have.
No, not paid to have, but if you're accepting an opportunity for sleeping with your boss or bosses or being propositioned that it'll go further if you do this, what's the difference between a job opportunity and cash?
Now, I do want to say this. I don't think everything exists in a vacuum. And while these are allegations, that there are certain things we will just never know, if you keep PCD's club origins in mind. The dance troupe, the burlesque dance troupe that began in '95 and further developed into this thing for 10 years before the recording group took flight. They started at the Viper Room that was owned by Johnny Depp. And if you know anything about the Viper Room, it has been plagued with infamy and controversy. And I'm not saying that just because of these ideas, right, the drug use in that club, the overdose that have occurred in that club, somebody passed away in that club, the illegal gambling in that club, a lot of dark things happened at that venue, and it has a very negative reputation. And that was back in the dance troupe days. So that could be completely removed. But I think those histories are very intertwined as far as like the timeline, that you cannot fully take that out of your mind. Okay? It really makes you think, how deep does the PCD rabbit hole go? I think that's why these rumors really took off at the time, and then they kind of fizzled out, because Robin Antin shut this shit down as quick as she could, saying that Kaya was never a member of PCD. Barely. But rather, quote, a Pussycat reject who's looking for 15 minutes of fame. Does say something to me that the past members have spoken about their experience since. They've gone on podcasts, they've been on talk shows, they have not been shy about sharing the negatives of their experience and their struggles in the group, as we've talked about. And they've exposed a lot, but they have not co-signed these details. And I do feel like somebody at this point would have alluded to it or would have given more life to these rumors.
Okay, let me debunk this little theory about Miss Kaya, and this is the first time I'm ever speaking on this. Kaya was never a member of the Pussycat Dolls. Like I told you before, it was a year-long audition. She didn't make the cut. The thing is, we had the record deal, but they didn't know who they were going to sign. So we were like, you got to pay us something. So that's why they paid us $500 a week. And she like goes on CNN. I'm watching this, her calling us like the front for a prostitution ring, saying we were passed around.
Wow.
Here's the thing. When we got signed and Don't Ya came out, we didn't have any time at all. We hit the ground running. You didn't have a life. So for her to try to take credit for the hard work that we did when we didn't even really get paid that much.
But I'm going to leave this here because she was not truly a part of the group, and I don't want to overstate that. But this was a scandal that I remember hearing about. I hadn't heard about or thought about PCD in a minute, as she popped up with these claims, and it was like, oh shoot. Lastly, in the scandal, we have to talk about the legal battle. There was a legal battle between Robin Antin and Nicole Scherzinger. In 2019, PCD minus Melody decided that they wanted to come back for a reunion. They were planning a reunion tour and to reconvene. Now, in order to do this, they had to sort out the business aspects of PCD. And the tour was initially planned for April 2020. Now, in order to get the reunion plans off of the ground, Nicole signed on under a development agreement with Robin Antin's new company, PCD Worldwide. PCD Worldwide, as well as this agreement, was going to set the terms for future tour and business structure, handling the future earnings of the band and the business. But things went haywire when Robin sued Nicole in September 2021, citing an unfulfilled memorandum of understanding. And that's a type of agreement between two parties, very simply. Now, Robin and Nicole had been in discussions of a PCD revival commercially for a while behind the scenes. Dating back to November 2017, concert promotion company Live Nation had advanced $600,000 to PCD Incorporated, which Antin was in charge of at the time, in control of at the time. Now, the funds were released under the condition that Nicole would be performing at a future PCD reunion. Robin put her hand out and said, I will take that money. I got y'all.
Possible reunion. Yeah. We're talking about it, and we're really like, we're going through all the details. But I kind of think it's gonna happen.
This memorandum of understanding was dated February 2019 and outlined the following terms. Nicole agreed to 45 live shows for 32.5% tour profits. Ashley, Kimberly, and Jessica receiving 12.5%, and Carmit receiving 5%. It was based off of the workload, the singing load, and who was in the group the longest. And in addition to tour profit earnings, Nicole would get 49% share in profits in PCD Worldwide, which was a new business venture. And that would be exchanged for her participation in the reunion tour. While Robin Antin would get 51% ownership of PCD Worldwide profits and shares. One thing Robin Antin was going to make sure, I run this show. I will always have the highest percentage and stake in this business opportunity. I don't care how long it's been. Now, although Nicole was initially promoting the tour on social media and bolstering up excitement and support, the lawsuit alleges, despite this affirmation of her participation, Scherzinger now refuses to participate in the reunion tour. In 2021, Scherzinger demanded to renegotiate the terms of the memorandum. Now, this is the heart of the legal battle. According to Robin, Nicole came back to the table after they had agreed on her getting that 49%. Nicole allegedly demanded that she now wanted her share bumped up to 75% in PCD worldwide, as well as getting full creative control and final decision-making authority. Or else she would not participate in the tour. Therefore, Robin claims this is going back on the agreement. Robin also claims that by this point, Live Nation was knocking at her door wanting their $600,000 investment back. Nicole's not doing the tour, we need our money back. Period. That was what was agreed upon. Stepping out of this, Robin is like, this ruined a business venture. They asked me for my money back after she said that she would be involved in this. But Nicole's lawyer, Howard King, said not so fast. He denies these claims and countersued Robin Antin for $1.1 million in damages. They claimed that Robin mismanaged the Live Nation funds and it had nothing to do with Nicole, alleging that Robin borrowed and spent that $600,000 prior to Nicole's involvement, and that kind of makes sense. Those funds were released around November 2017. They hadn't yet really put the memorandum together until 2019. So it does sound like Robin was like, cool, I'll use the money and I'll get Nicole on board later. Therefore, Nicole is like, you used my name without consent. Touche. You used my name without having my participation or agreement at that time. And you took that Live Nation money. That has nothing to do with me. Because actually, according to Nicole, she had to invest her own funds, upwards of $150,000 to support the comeback. So she's like, I don't really know. Like, she got the $600,000 and she's saying that I should, I was the reason why this floundered. Honey, I had to put up my own money. So as you can see, even when the Pussycat Dolls tried to come back together, it was some drama. It was some mess. It was always something. Reunion tour was a fail. And it was all driven by greed. It was all driven by greed, and specifically Robin Antin wanting to keep the PCD dream alive. And while I will say there were mixed thoughts about Nicole wanting potentially 75% share, does seem like a big jump. Seems kind of crazy. At the same time and at the same token, when we talk about the structure and how these girls were thrown into this 360 deal and exploited, and Robin Antin, I think, definitely benefited more financially from PCD. She was the creator. She was a trademarker. I will give her that. At the end of the day, after all of these years in the legacy that is PCD, we cannot lie and say that Nicole Scherzinger makes up majority of that legacy, what people are going to remember from that group. And the girls. No offense to Robin Antin, but it was them on that stage. And so after a while, I think they wanted, and Nicole wanted more leverage. Like, if I'm going to be doing this, I'm going to get more out of this. I'm not going to be sitting here sharing 51% with you. I'm not doing it. But again, to some people, that presents as Nicole's not a team player. She's greedy. She wants more. So you guys see how these narratives keep pushing and pushing and pushing through decades, because we gonna get to more. So in January 2022, Nicole announced the tour's official cancellation, largely citing the pandemic, but there was also this legal battle brewing in the background that, by the way, took years to finally settle. The dispute was resolved in November 2025. So very recently, they came up with a settlement agreement, and those terms have been undisclosed. So now let's get into after the breakup. They did go their own ways for years before coming back together as a group. And so the way that I'm going to do this, there's 6 members, so we're not going to sit here and talk about every little detail of what everybody was up to, because a lot of their journeys intersected. A lot of them went similar pathways after. All of the girls, most of the girls got involved with reality TV. Now, several shows were more traditional reality. For example, Kimberly went on to win Celebrity Home Master Chef. Ashley gained some notoriety on a UK television series, And she actually gained a huge support. She was one of the breakout stars from her reality TV stint in the UK. So people like Kimberly and Ashley have made the UK their home. They were very embraced by UK audiences. Melody did a show called Pop Star to Opera Star in 2011, while a lot of them also participated in dance-centered competition shows, right? So Melody, Ashley, and Kimberly did Dance on Ice and participated in different years. Nicole won her season of Dancing with the Stars in 2010, so she took away the Mirrorball trophy. Some of them also decided to judge. They were on the other side of the table. Nicole was an X Factor UK judge, guest judge in 2010, and she's actually credited for putting the final lineup of One Direction together. Kimberly judged for several dance competition shows like Live to Dance alongside Paula Abdul. Nicole judged for The Masked Singer US for 10 seasons. Nicole was always in her hosting bag, her judging bag, while Melody won the 4th season of The Masked Singer Australia in 2022. So the girls were not necessarily shy to hit reality TV. Now, to talk about their solo careers, each member did pursue a solo career at different points and at different paces. Kimberly was a part of a 2010 electropop duo called Her Majesty and the Wolves, while Carmit was also in a pop duo called Lady Station, which formed in 2011 and disbanded in 2016. Many of the girls took their shot as well at a full-fledged music career. We can talk about Jessica. Jessica Sutta very specifically was close to establishing a full-fledged pop career, a breakthrough solo career. She was on the verge of that. She signed to Hollywood Records in 2011. Yes, the label affiliated with Disney. And she did have a song peak at #1 on the Hot Dance Club Songs chart. She was the first Pussycat doll to reach the top of an American chart solo. Her label had a huge debut album planned where she was in the studio with producers like Timbaland and Red One, but it was scrapped and she was dropped from the label. She cites creative differences and Hollywood Records saying they did not know how to market her to a teen audience. Melody released her debut single not long after PCD had disbanded. She also released her debut mixtape alongside it.
POYBL stands for Piss on Your Blacklist. I think about not being mainstream anymore. I think about not being funded by a major label and supported by a major label and thinking, I'm not on the list. Like, I'm not favored. Sometimes you get intimidated by that idea or you get afraid. And then you turn around and you say, actually, no, piss on your blacklist.
She'd pop back up with music nearly 7 years later with her debut EP in 2022. Now, the reason why there was such a gap is because she was off completing other musical missions, which we will discuss. Ashley had signed to a label around 2012 and had released a debut single. And 2 years after that debut single, she did release a debut album, but it failed to chart. So it didn't really go anywhere. She focused a lot of her time on reality TV. We already discussed Nicole's solo career, so we won't rehash that too much. But that launched and seized, as we know, in the early to mid 2010s. It was very start and stop, but she was booked and busy. So she was also focused on other ventures. In 2022, she revved up her solo career yet again and released an EP unsigned as an independent artist. And she also released another single with David Guetta. This is, I feel like, the bones of what a lot of the girls were up to: Broadway musicals. Melody claimed the stage in adaptations of the Bodyguard musical. She was assigned the lead role, performing throughout the UK and Ireland in 2023. And prior to, she appeared in musical productions of Cinderella and another show called Rip It Up the 70s. Carmit went into show production after PCD around 2008, and she produced The Zodiac Show, where she would dance, sing, direct. That was a passion project for her. Ashley Roberts made her West End debut in 2019 and starred in the musical Waitress for a limited summer season. Nicole is very accomplished in theater. She was cast in Rent at the Hollywood Bowl shortly after leaving PCD. In 2015, she starred in the Cats musical, making her West End debut. She was also going to revive this role on Broadway, but allegedly quit after producers refused to give her top billing. You guys see how these allegations strike? Like, they're sprinkled in like some salt, just sprinkled. In 2017, she appeared in the Dirty Dancing made-for-TV musical. Her performance was the only one in this musical that received high praise. As for acting, she had some really cool opportunities. Did some voice acting in the first Moana and the second as Sina, who is Moana's mother. Now, Nicole also won a Tony Award as of recent for her performance in Sunset Boulevard, a show revived on Broadway and the West End. In 2025, she took home the award for Best Actress in a Musical. Yeah, so it's safe to say that maybe this entire time, Nicole really belonged on Broadway. I think that was the way that she was going to shine, and her talents would be actualized and appreciated in some of its rawest form, and all of its extraness. Most of them had some sort of musical Broadway stint. Huge accomplishment. And as for their personal lives, Jessica, Kimberly, and Carmit have all started family throughout the years respectively. Nicole is engaged as of 2023. While she is very career focused, that's something she's made extremely clear. And she actually just appeared last year on the Netflix series Building the Band. The one thing about Nicole Scherzinger, that girl is going to be booked. She will be busy. Melody mainly has focused on music and performing. A national anthem here, a red carpet there. She makes herself visible. And Ashley as well is very career focused. And I will say this, I love how career focused a lot of them are. I think it's great, you know, that a lot of them were able to start families, but on the flip, I also love to see that they're very happy and fulfilled in their careers and they're focusing on that. All of the PCD members have had a similar story or pathway after their time in the group. And I think that says a lot. That shows that they all had passion, dedication, and talent. All of them stayed in the creative field in some way, shape, or form. So kudos to a lot of them for staying in the spotlight and making shit shake. And to finish out the video, where they are now, we talked about their 2019 comeback where Nicole, Carmit, Jessica, Kimberly, and Ashley announced a reunion tour and the PCD reset that they were going to come back and do the thing. Melody declined because she wanted to focus more on solo projects, and to be honest, I think that was for the best. She was able to dodge the legal mess that would come out of all of this.
Yeah, I'm a singer. Yeah. So for me, there's really nothing to go back to.
Fair enough.
Because the
No, I
songs that
understand.
we have are the songs that we have.
Yeah. Like you were invited to be a part of the revival, and ultimately it was your decision.
I definitely talked about it. We kicked around the idea. Yeah, because I had people on my team saying, oh, I'd hate for you to miss out on a cash grab or an opportunity. I'm so sorry. I don't want to live my life, on a cash grab.
Prior to this comeback, there was a lot of runaround because Robin Anton had been in the process of creating a new generation of Pussycat dolls with Pia Mia at the center. For those of you guys who don't know, you're in for a treat. I did a whole video about Pia Mia. What happened to Pia Mia? So singer Pia Mia was contacted by Robin Anton to be involved in a PCD reboot. And this was around 2018. At this time, there was press chatter about PCD doing a reunion as in the original members. However, that would be being put on hold. I guess they were not all on the same page with Robin because she was already trying to create a new PCD using their name and using the PCD brand, and there were reports that the OG members were not happy about this.
How's everything going with the new group?
I don't know what I can say.
Yeah, I don't know. That's what you were up to the last time I saw you at the dance studio, huh? You just couldn't talk about it.
It's been so long.
Well, are you guys gonna drop new music or go on tour or what's?
Well, I'm always working on new music, so hopefully I can say more soon.
But instead of Nicole Scherzinger as lead, Pia Mia would be the head honcho. And I think a lot of people who knew who Pia was, everybody didn't, right? But a lot of people were like, oh, flashbacks, this is just going to be Nicole 2.0. Use the group to promote Pia's solo career. Because if you do not know, Pia Mia had a mini hit in 2015, but she couldn't quite soar solo. There was a lot of issues that plagued her career. Go check out that video. But Robin Anton posted several videos teasing Pia Mia's presence in the group. They were doing auditions for the group, and it was going to be structured very similar to how they did the original. At this time as well, guys, Robin Anton did open up a studio called Playground. A lot of you guys who are familiar with dance, if you see all those LA dance videos, Playground is a very prominent studio in LA. She was into some other ventures, and she was pulling and plucking some girls from Playground to be a part of this group. But remember, Robin Anton technically owns that brand. No matter how fair or unfair it feels, she did have the right, it sounds like legally, to do what she wanted to do with her brand. One thing Robin Anton is going to do is reboot that damn group, and she don't care who's in it. So a lot of fans did not even give great feedback to this news of a new generation, so it never fully got off the ground, and the OGs did go through with that half-baked reunion in 2019. At the top of the new year, PCD was featured on Meghan Trainor's single Genetics, so that got a little bit of play. And in 2020, they performed their new track React on the X Factor finale. And it's not PCD if they're not pushing the limits, okay? Because a story as old as PCD's conception, over 400 complaints from viewers were called in, with people upset about the provocative performance. And they were not going to lay down and take it this time, okay? Nicole went to the press and said, if you have people like Lizzo leading the movement of accepting yourself and they don't get any criticism, which she did. I don't know why Nicole acted like Lizzo didn't get hate or criticism. She absolutely did anyways, okay? Then why are we getting this criticism? When we perform from a place of passion and power. We're not floundering out there just trying to be cute. We're still trying to fight the stigma of, we're not just getting up here sexy dancing. It's not striptease. We are actually up here dancing in heels, 6-inch heels. We're singing our ass off. And it's art. So this was their first single in over a decade and was released independently. Now, we know the debacle with the planned reunion tour. It didn't pan out. It was supposed to be in April 2020, but COVID happened. And then the lawsuit spawned between Nicole and Robin. And yet again, the other girls were just sitting ducks. They all kind of disbanded for the years and came back together, some of them, in 2026. Let's talk about the 2026 comeback. Surprise! Just kidding. PCD popped back up again this time, but only with 3 members. March 2026, they popped up. Nicole, Ashley, and Kimberly. The amount of lineups is insane. Like, what version are we on of PCD? Are we on like 8 or 9? Because I think we're on version 8 or 9. And of course, they started to do press. And in one televised interview, Nicole was asked the very simple question.
After they found out that you guys were coming back as a trio, not as the original group, how did you arrive at that decision?
Where are the other girls at? Very simple. You would think, you know what, PR, media training, this is the most predictable question. Well, Nicole did not have a good answer. She had no answer, actually.
Listen, we are so, as women today.
Someone said, for once, Nicole was happy someone else spoke up.
It has been an ever-changing lineup, and this is what it looks like now in 2026, and you never know what comes next. And I think ultimately we've got to protect our peace. And when something like the Pussycat Dolls has so much history, we have ruptured in the past, and right now we are repairing.
Now, that's how, to me, the economy is bad, because there's no way their hearts are truly in this. Some people have speculated the reason why Ashley and Kimberly have come back is over the years. I think they were were dancers first, and they were very clear about it. They were there to dance. Like, I don't think that they were as pressed about the singing parts like Melody, like Carmit. Now, they released their single Club Song in March as well to pair with the comeback. And while it did appear on the UK singles chart, the need for a new PCD in 2026 is questionable. So their PCD Forever tour was announced, and it is on the way. Allegedly, we will see. Okay, it's supposed to start in June 2026 and conclude in October 2026. So this is their redo because their previous tour never saw the light of day. Some girls felt that they were on the outs with this reunion project. Now, Melody is somewhere frolicking in a field. She's not concerned with the PCD reunion, tour, comeback. Leave me out of it. But Carmit and Jessica both had something to say. They both claimed that they were not invited to this reunion tour and learned about plans publicly. I did the 2019 reunion. The tour fell through because of y'all's legal business, your battle. We put that on pause, to be continued. Probably had conversations behind the scenes of coming back together eventually. And you guys go through with this, and I have to hear about it on the internet. Jessica recently came out on a podcast, and she discussed her side of not being invited to this reunion.
None of us were called. None of us were told about anything. In fact, we were blindsided. And that's kind of how it was always. It was always a secretive thing, always these secrets. And they have been planning it for a year. I'm not going to lip sync into a microphone ever again. Okay. Those days are over. When we went back in 2019, we did a reunion tour, and we were doing the show at GAY in London. I'll never forget this. And we're like thinking our microphones are on. And then we go to introduce ourselves and no one could hear me. I looked at Carmit when we got off stage and I said, girl, I can't do this anymore. I was like, this is not okay. And even her microphone wasn't on and she was a lead. One of the things that was promised, she alluded that, okay, we're gonna do a single and you guys are gonna sing leads and you're gonna blah, 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 blah. So we get to London, we prepare for the X Factor because we were gonna do, announce the reunion tour and do this thing. And she goes, hey guys, I have something to play you. She plays us React. And again, we're not on the damn song. And the next day we had to perform React.
Clutch your pearls. You guys are probably going to be a little bit like, what? Nah. Record scratch. She said that although she probably wasn't going to be able to return to PCD because of a vaccine injury, you guys feel me? You guys get where this is heading, right? Which she claims is from the COVID vaccine. Yeah, Jessica, over the years, this was something that she was struggling with, and she was going to conservative media outlets. So that's kind of the path that she started. She claims that she got this injury and she can't dance like she used to. Boom. Okay, but that's not it. That's not the only thing. She'd go on to support RFK in the previous election, which she acknowledged aligns her with MAGA. She's like, look, I'm not saying I'm MAGA, but like it does inherently align me with MAGA. On this podcast, she theorized straight up that I was not invited on this tour because of my political views.
It's a cash grab. I mean, come on, let's keep it real.
Right.
And I was a liability. I aligned with Bobby Kennedy, which is aligning with MAGA. Do I love what Trump is doing? Absolutely not. I do not believe in war. But we didn't have a chance for the injured community to get help.
But to me, that don't make sense because Nicole Scherzinger, a couple years ago in 2024, got in hot water for aligning or kind of inadvertently directly aligning herself with MAGA based off of a post she liked from Russell Brand. And actually, if we want to go even deeper, Nicole Scherzinger has talked about how she was raised very conservative Roman Catholic. And when she got a role in Dirty Dancing, the made-for-TV film in 2017, she almost did not play her character. And she almost turned the role down because the character had an abortion and she didn't want to promote it. So I don't think that's the thing, because if we really want to talk about conservatism and aligning yourself, I don't think that Nicole Scherzinger, that was something that would have let her stop you from getting your bag. Now, Carmit was let down for another reason, given her history with the band itself, its origin story. I mean, let's be for real. Like, if we want to give credit where it's due, Carmit is almost the reason that PCD became what it was, like that it even turned into a recording group. So she just said, I would have loved to be given a heads up, some communication. That's it. As for the status of PCD and their legacy and where they are, I mean, I think Nicole's wacky answer to such a simple question, the awkwardness surrounding it, the non-answer. What am I talking about? An answer? It was a non-answer. It's just another drama point added to the bucket. Another drop added to the bucket, a bucket that's been overflowing for years and years and years. And while a lot of people joke and they're like, you know what, PCD's back. I mean, the mess itself, PCD's back. I'm seated. I think it unravels more and more of like what PCD was to begin with. It was a business venture. I think these girls, like, to some capacity, respect each other. I don't think there was this closeness. This was a brand, not a band. It was a brand. Period. And that is, I do think, how they're still going to function in 2026, personally. That was what happened to the Pussycat Dolls. Their story is still being written. It's kind of smart. I mean, you look at tours like the Millennium Tour. I saw Danity Kane, which I will be doing a video on them soon. Just a lot of research to do. I think a lot of like millennial groups are starting to realize the power in nostalgia and they're capitalizing on it. We are living in such dark times, and for a lot of millennials, even older Gen Z, some of the only ways that we experience joy or relaxation or an escape from the status quo, from the everyday, is to reminisce on when life felt simpler. I do think that they're actually kind of smart to capitalize in it, but I don't think that they should be doing this unless if they can get, honestly, all the members back. And I just don't think Melody is interested, and I don't blame her. That's it. That's all. Make sure you hit that subscribe button to keep up with all of the videos that I post. Make sure you turn on those post notifications, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.